call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, all council members are present. We had an agenda that was presented in your packet. Is there any changes to the agenda as presented?
We have an addition of the unfinished business, just to report on the hydrology study.
Okay,
We
we'll,
have an amended staff report for the sale of excess vehicles and $7,000.
okay, and you had a handout for both of these. You had a handout for the excess vehicle this evening, so add that into your packet. And we'll add the report on hydrology study under unfinished business. Anything else? Is there a motion to approve the agenda with those changes?
So move.
Motion by Warren and seconded by Dave. Any discussion? I'll call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against. We also have our minutes from our September 3rd meeting. Is there any additions, corrections, or changes to the minutes as presented?
Under the roll call, there's no mention of Councilman Olson being there.
Missing one.
Missing one, yep.
That is all I saw.
Very good. Any other changes to the minutes as presented? Oh, were you at that meeting? Were you at that meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, it was the
It was the budget meeting.
budget meeting you were out, right?
On the 10th, I was not.
All right, thank you.
No.
Any other questions, comments? Is there a motion to approve the minutes with that change?
So moved.
Motion by Dave, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Warren. I'll call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against. At this time is our public open forum. Is there anybody here who wishes to address the council? Anybody wish to address the council? Any students wish to address the council? No? Okay, that's common. All right. Hearing none, we're going to move on. We have no hearings tonight, but we do have 3 reports. So we'll start with the police department monthly report. Brian?
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
Yep.
Activity report for August 2014. Some of the numbers we had 9 alarm calls. We had 34 assists for other agencies. You notice we had 14 for Stearns County. A lot of them were, or most of them were for Stearns County probations doing breast sample for one of their clients that come in for a meeting to do that. So that's why that's so high. We had 9 dog complaints, 1 dog bite, some dogs at large, and just 2 other general complaints. 9 driving without license citations were given. We had 8 driving complaints. We had 6 arrests for a small amount of marijuana and drug paraphernalia. We had 24 matter of information calls, 14 medicals, 22 suspicious activity calls. 9 of them are just the activity part of it. 6 suspicious person calls, 1 suspicious phone call, and 1 smell. And 6 suspicious vehicle calls. We had 14 deaths. We had 4 unwanted person calls. We had 235 verbal warnings given out. We had 6 welfare checks. And that's pretty much it, for a total of 611. And compare that to 2013, we're up 6 calls. We're down 45 warnings, and we're down total by 48. Compared to July, you see that we're up 11 calls, down 52 warnings, and down So for August, the report on the K9 is Officer Jensen, they have the dog picked out. The name of the dog is Jackson. It's a white, yellow lab, the way it looks. And we should be starting training with that the end of September here, beginning of October.
Expect us to see it in the community when? Expect that we'll see it in the community when?
The training usually takes 2 to 3 weeks, so anytime after that.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Brian? None? Do you want to take a moment and fix the mic since this is being recorded for the...
Yeah, he's got it now.
You got it? There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect, thanks, Brian.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Is that better?
Is it working? Yep, all right, we're good. We'll move
Try it
on to the
again.
Planning Commission report. Go ahead, Sarah.
Good evening. In your packet, you have a copy of our agenda that we had a meeting on September 9th. And at that meeting, we had one public hearing for rezoning, which you will be taking an action item on that on 7E later on the meeting agenda. There was building reports and some monthly reports of the activity and how many building permits. There was a chart in there that from the last about 4 years. We went through the fee schedule with a few changes that we'll be presenting that later on in a future meeting at the council. And Diane and I will be attending some government training service educational events later in October. And we also did discuss about a pending conditional use application that we are still working with someone on that. So are there any questions?
Can you, maybe at the next meeting, could you bring us a breakdown of the building permits on what's remodels and what's new homes? Or do you have that?
I have that in the original packet, yeah. I can put it in the packet, yep.
Just, I don't necessarily need a packet, I've just a question on, I know we're down in total permits, but I was understanding from the community that we were actually up in new homes, so I'm just curious if that
Right.
correlates.
Right, we are down in actual number of permits. I think we're at only about 100 and, I can't remember the number, maybe 112 at this time. But at the end of August, for our quarterly, for the actual total building value that has increased, it's just over $5 million.
Right.
So there has been some homes being built, there's been some commercial things that have done that have really added some, building value to that. And I'll be happy to get that to you.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Bless
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Sarah?
Sarah, you want to explain on the building permits? That question popped up during the planning commission meeting on that not all the permits are shown in the building report, like the concrete and
Oh, the zoning permits,
zoning
yes.
permits.
Okay.
Basically, that's what we see is zoning
Right.
permits.
Okay, yes, at the planning commission meeting, the chart that I usually give them is just building permits, so just construction for residential or commercial, industrial. Zoning permits usually fall under that $10 permit fee or $25 for signs, and there's zoning permits. And I usually put that one out, like this year I've only done 45 of them, and I usually do that one in the end of the year because there's really not that many of them. But the zoning permits that Warren was mentioning is like, those are the permits for your concrete, your driveways, or those kind of things, or decks, well, not decks, but not so much a building structure, but anything else you do to your property
Do
falls
you
into
know
that.
if those were included in years 2011 and 12 when our numbers were extremely high? I know we had
No,
other issues
those
then.
zoning permits, no, in this
Have
chart,
never
this is,
been included.
this is just building permits.
Okay.
And
very
those
good.
would have been high because of that storm, with,
Yep.
the two storms, yep.
Right.
Absolutely. All right, very good. Thank you.
Okay,
Good
thank you.
report.
Anything
Anybody
else?
have any questions? Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
We'll move on then to the Airport Commission report. Vicki?
Okay, the airport board met in their regular session on Wednesday, September 10th. You do have a copy of their agenda. They did talk about some of the issues the Public Works is working on out there, how we're going to deal with the hangar doors that are north-facing or east-facing, freezing down and having chemicals that are appropriate for airplanes, and also talking about some of the other maintenance items at the airport. The airport pavement inspection report, the inspection's been completed. We don't have the report yet, and that report is going to drive what project we're going to select next year. They did talk about the drainage by the fueling station. They're going to look at a different kind of alternative drain to try to keep the water. It comes off the taxiway and it sits kind of between the drain, or the taxiway and the AD building. And they want to get that out of there because it becomes an ice problem in the spring. We received some information on getting a new credit card reader and vendor and a pump out there. The one that we have is very old, and MnDOT does have some discretionary funds that we could possibly qualify for an 80-20 grant for that without dipping into our FAA funds on that. The master plan project is being closed out. Our final submittal for reimbursement's been submitted to MnDOT and the FAA, and those dollars should be coming soon. On the new business, our CIP meeting, and that's planning the next 20 years at the airport, October 6th, and that is held at the St. Cloud Airport. And that's where our airport is the only item on the agenda for an hour, and we get to meet with the FAA, and if anybody wants to go to that, you're certainly welcome. Our SWIP application renewal has been submitted. I don't know why this is doing this. And that's that 5-year. We had 5 years ago, we had to have a SWIP application. We have applied for the renewal on that. We did receive updated flight procedures for both ends of the runway. They have submitted their budget for 2015, and you recall at the meeting we talked about a courtesy car, and they talked about how much a courtesy car is used, and they are recommending that you keep that in the budget. The land acquisition and easement on the north end of the runway, the public utility and the airport would kind of go together on a possible purchase, but some things have changed at the utility where they may not need that property for sludge applications, so we have declined as well to participate in that purchase. And informational items, they're looking to make new improvements for the fly-in for next year. So the airport had a fairly successful meeting, and they're doing well.
Very good. Anybody have any questions? Vicki, is it possible for you to bring in at a future meeting a report of the usage at the airport? I think people log when they actually stop in at the
Some of
airport.
them do.
Some do?
Some do.
Be curious to know what that, whether it's through fuel log or through just the logbook. I think it's good information for the community to know how many times that's used throughout a month or quarter or year.
Okay.
Thank you. Questions?
Nope.
All right, well, we'll move into our action items. Do we need anything with that before we?
No.
It's very sensitive today.
We're approving a budget for 2015. We might want to add that in there somewhere. All right, let's move on. Our action items, 7A, approving resolution 2014-69, approving the preliminary 2015 budget. Vicki?
What this budget, no, I don't.
You're on. You're on.
You're on. No, you are not.
It's, the green light is on.
There you go.
I'm on,
There you go.
okay. The, what you have in front of you here is just a compilation of the budget meeting that we had, the workshop. I think there was only one change to that. We had an exchange in the city hall portion for electric usage. I think David brought that up, and so that has been included. Otherwise, this preliminary expense budget is what you reviewed at the workshop meeting. So all this resolution does is puts that in paper that's preliminarily adopted, and of course, then it can be a work in progress till December when it's finally adopted. And this is Resolution 2013-69.
Any questions? As Vicki noted, this is just the preliminary budget, but it is the budget that we will be working on. And at this point, if the budget is to change, it'll only go down as we finalize the final budget in December. So this also establishes the tax levy for 2015, and the budget is built around that. So just for the information. If there's none, is there a motion to approve Resolution 2013-69, adopting the 2015 preliminary budget for all funds and departments as presented?
So move.
Motion by Warren, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dave. Is there any discussion? All right, I'll call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against. Okay, next item, approve resolution 2014-70, approving the preliminary 2014, excuse me, I said this, property tax levy.
What you have in front of you is the resolution that supports that budget, and this represents the same levy as we have for several years. I also have on your desk the spreadsheet that I presented earlier, the 2004 through 2015 proposed levy expense, along with the chart if there was a 1%, 1.5 to 2.5, whatever increase, and what that would mean to the budget. And so what I presented here in the resolution form is what we discussed at the meeting with keeping the levy the same as we have in the prior years. And this would be your opportunity if you wish to make a change to that. Otherwise, once this is approved, it cannot go up, it can only go down.
All right, any questions? As Vicki noted, again, we only have the dates back to 2009, but our levy is maintained at this level for all of certainly 6 years now, going into 2015. Keep in mind, we approved the adopted 2014 property tax levy, which we actually collect in 2015.
15, right.
So just for clarification. If there's no questions, comments?
I'm the one that went and called Vicki and wanted her to bring this report back as far as what we've levied for the last few years, and with that 1%, 1.5%, and 2%. Basically, we seen it the night of the budget meeting, but I don't know if we all had a good enough chance to actually look at this and comprehend the whole situation. And now it's been a week, so I figured it'd be better to look at it now. We were told that night that we're probably looking at a 12% reduction in property taxes because of the discontinuance of a lot of tax increment financing, where if we even raise our levy by 1.5%, we would probably still be looking at a 10% reduction in property taxes. I was just wanted this brought back basically because I want everybody to kind of look at it a little closer. The auditors have pointed out that we need to have at least 6 months operating revenue. I think if we did increase it, we could come more to being more compliant with the auditor's report. At the same time, we can still show the property or the taxpayers a 10% reduction. So I was just asking for everybody to kind of look at it and see if anything has changed from last Wednesday night when we did the budget.
Well, you bring up a very good point, because I think I was the one that was pretty vocal at the budget meeting recommending that we do some type of an increase to meet not, I won't say the requirement, but the request of our auditors to maintain the 6-month operating cash flow. And I think at that particular meeting, everybody had just said, you know what, we want to keep it the same. It was towards the end when Vicki and we all had a chance to ask some questions that we understood that we're still going to see a significant decrease, as you mentioned, in our, excuse me, a significant increase in our tax base, because what happened is the TIF districts, and many of them have been decertified. And when they go, and when they're decertified, then those revenues, rather than going back to the developer, come to the city, to the general fund. So it's pretty straightforward as to how it works, but this happens to be a year where we have some very large districts that are no longer, that are being decertified, so those dollars come to our general fund, which allows us to, obviously, because of decertification and those revenues come back into the city, then the overall tax capacity that's set out amongst all of the residents in the community is decreased to make up that difference.
Right.
So that's where the 12% is, as you noted. So yeah, there's definitely, I would support the council's decision on how you feel going into 2015. And I would be very open to increasing that 1.5%. I think would be very close to meeting the cash flow needs that the city is recommended to have by our auditors. So it's just it's a thought. I'll leave it up to the council to decide. I know we talked about it. We decided at our budget meeting it would stay the same, so I'm open to any further discussion. Now would be the time to change it, as this is the last opportunity we have.
Right.
Anybody have any other thoughts? Okay.
Well, I know one thought occurs to me right off the bat is we can't go up but we could go down. So if we passed 1.5% now, we still have the option to consider, when the budget is finalized, we have the option to lower it again. We can't go up.
You cannot increase the tax levy, that is correct. You
But-
could
But we could
decrease
if,
the levy.
if the budget numbers look different 3 months from now,
Yes,
We could
we
decrease
could make
it,
that adjustment.
yeah,
right?
yep. The final levy, the final budget in December allows you that opportunity to decrease the budget and overall decrease the levy.
It makes sense to me. We're seeing a big increase in our tax base, where everybody's going to see a significant drop in the city property taxes. We've been tightening our belt every year for a long time now, and sooner or later, it's going to be the end. And I'd rather see us make a small change rather than have to make a big change down the road because we kept putting it off.
The way I look at it is we're basically taking care of the auditor situation with our fund balance with the 6 month. At the same time, we're still doing what we're here for, to keep the taxes low for the taxpayers. So, you know, even by increasing at 1.5%, I think we're accomplishing two things. And I don't know if that night when it was brought to us, if we really had the full scope and had time to think about it. So, you know, if you want me to make a motion, I will.
Before I have you go into the motion and ask for
Sure.
one, let me see if there's any other comments.
Sure.
Anybody have any other comments?
It's a little perplexing. I mean, that night of the budget meeting, this was pretty much the information we had in regards to the fact that the tax base was increasing, TIFs were going away. And you were the one that made the motion to it remain at zero. What changed from then to now in your mind that we would now entertain an increase to the levy?
Basically, we didn't see that until we walked into that meeting that night. It wasn't handed out with the budget packet.
We didn't see what?
And we didn't really take any action because it was just a workshop, so there was no motions.
I saw that.
It came that night, but it didn't come with the budget.
Okay.
So that's the reason why, you know,
But
there's a lot of times the council has gotten stuff that night where, on a night of a council meeting where we've sat back and said, we need more time to think about this. This is one of them situations when it came to a workshop. I did that night state that I thought we should keep the same, but I also didn't have time to look at the full picture, and I think that's what I had a chance to do.
Okay, and I think, you know, just so everybody understands, we did not do any action at that.
Right.
At that workshop. So again, I know we had discussion about whether or not the levy should stay or be increased. And so, yeah, I think we all get an opportunity to review. Again, that's why we get our packets and you get your information and you get time. So I respect the fact that you have an opportunity and now is the time to be heard. Any other comments? Hearing none, would you like to entertain a motion, Mr. Stone?
Well, I'll entertain a motion that we adopt the 2014 property tax levy with an increase of 1.5%.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt resolution 2014-70, adapting the preliminary 2014 property tax levy collectible of 2015 with an increase of 1.5%. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, a motion by Warren, seconded by Dave. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against. Thank you. Very good discussion, and as I stated in the beginning, this is the time to have that discussion and to make those changes if necessary, so thanks for taking the time. Moving on to C, approve resolution 2014-71, setting a date for the public meeting.
This resolution sets the date of December 3rd. That is the date when we'll be adopting or proposing to adopt the final budget and levy, and that is the time when the public will have an opportunity to come and ask questions and receive input on the budget. So this is, typically, we would schedule that to be that first council meeting of December. That way, as if we are unable to adopt at that time, we still have time at the second meeting to adopt it. So this resolution, 2014-71, schedules December 3rd as the public meeting for the budget.
Any questions? This is, again, consistent with every year when we go through the budgeting process. So is there a motion to approve Resolution 2014-71, scheduling December 3rd, 2014 as the date the council will publicly discuss the budget and allow the public to be heard on that subject?
So moved.
Motion by Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dave. Any discussion? Call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 5 in favor. Okay, moving on to D. Approve Resolution 2014-72, approving the relocation of a stop sign.
We had a request by a city resident that a stop sign at the intersection of Grove Lake Street and 5th Street be relocated. Currently, 5th Street stops for traffic, and Grove Lake merges directly onto 5th with no stop. It was requested that Grove Lake traffic be required to stop because of the visibility, and with the new tower, the traffic is going faster. And this would be for eastbound traffic. I did attach an aerial view to your packet where you can see that, and it didn't copy real well, but the pink line across the end of Grove Lake was where it would stop. And then the one just to the left of that on 5th Street would be removed. And so that was the proposal that the resident had requested. And then the city engineer looked at it and with visibility felt it may be safer than the skewed intersection, but I also had the police chief look at it, and I think he had an alternate feeling about it. So I think between them and you should make a decision on whether it might be a good time to move that stop sign. Because right now they come down Getty, they go on to Grove Lake and on to 5th, all without a stop. And 5th Street's the one that has to stop.
And 5th Street has to stop when they are going east?
Yes.
Bound. And currently, when Grove Lake Street is requiring, or going northbound, they are not stopping today.
They don't stop either way
Don't stop
on Grove
either way.
Lake.
On Grove Lake, I realize that.
No, they don't
But
stop.
Mike, so what you're saying is you're recommending, or your option here is to remove that stop sign on 5th Street so the 5th Street traffic can move through without stopping, and move it over to Grove Lake Street and put the stop sign on Grove Lake Street and require them to stop there.
Correct.
Okay. Brian, do you have some additional comments you want to add to this?
Well,
Please come up to the mic just for the taping reasons.
just look through our history, we've had very, if at all, any accidents at that intersection. And I think from the existing stop signs, the way they exist at all the intersections previous to that Grove Lake, I just see the traffic flow, I just would think there'd be some issues with that, and I think putting the stop sign there would create more issues myself, but that's just my opinion, and from what I've seen with the traffic flow over the years and not having any accidents there, I would vote to myself to keep it as is. That's just my opinion.
So, Grove Lake Street and Getty Street, and it's really hard to see that, but it's actually Getty Street that comes down into Grove Lake Street. That is a through street that we use if there's ever construction or anything done on Highway 71. Typically, we route them up at 12th Street, over to Getty Street, and following all the way back to 71 again at 5th. I mean, that's considered I don't want to say it's a collector street, but it's considered a through street for any rerouting of 71. I know that's what we always had done in the past.
Yep.
So by doing that and rerouting that traffic, you're going to stop, this proposal would mean stopping there and then continuing on for another 200 feet and stopping again. Seems to slow traffic flow down if that's, needed during a time of reconstruct or whatever in the future. And I know we can always modify that if we're allowing permits for construction and whatnot, but just want to keep that in mind. Do you see a influx in speed, Brian, with the new street as it's been done? Have you had
I
calls?
think we've given out a few warnings on the streets, and that's like any street though, it seems like, since we get some new car down, everyone likes to hot rod down it. But otherwise, I haven't noticed anything additional.
Keith, as our engineer, do you have some comments as well?
Yes, Mayor Council. When I looked at this, the 5th Street, currently that stop sign, you're looking, to the right, you're looking at a skew that's, probably 140 degrees or so. So you're sort of looking behind, plus with the trees there in that vicinity, I think that really blocks some of the view. Now, I concur, there hasn't been any accidents there, so that's a good thing, but inherently looking at just the turning movements, the site, it's a lot easier to see from a stop on Grove Lake to look down 5th than it is from 5th to look down the opposite direction. So that's my point of view on it. If there hasn't been many accidents there, then, that certainly is something to consider, whether it's, worth leaving it as it is for now, and perhaps we can take it back up again sometime in the future. But that right hand look is is pretty severe in through there to look back kind of over your shoulder, your right shoulder.
Thank you. I want to throw one option out. I know, obviously, we've all had this packet since last week, since Friday. And I'll just be honest with you, now that I better understand the concerns and what Keith just noted there, I would ask the council to consider tabling this until the next meeting to give us a chance to actually physically drive that. And now understanding clearly what the concerns may or may not be, we could drive it and look for our own and come back with comments or questions if we have them for Keith or Brian or Vicky. So my recommendation, I would ask the council to consider tabling any action on this, and if you have comments, we'll take them now and get them to Vicky to get us more clarification. But
I would certainly make a motion to table.
okay, is there any other comments?
I just got a couple comments.
Yep.
The one thing is with that section of street, I've lived in town all my life, and I don't ever remember seeing a stop sign on that road. That was a state highway, or state aid highway for a while, because that was basically the truck route when the viaduct was too low. So all the truck traffic went that way. So you're looking at over 50 years that I don't think that thing's ever had a stop sign on it. The other thing to look at is I'm wondering, since the range of view on that corner for the 5th Street stop sign, if that wasn't something that when we redid that with the storm sewer and everything, that shouldn't have been a design thing that should have been fixed at the time, so we wouldn't have the problem now. This just, as we know out in the country, every township road or every county road is now going to 90-degree angles when you come up to a stop sign. Maybe we should have been looking at that when we did this street, somehow getting it so you don't have that huge range of view to the right. Mm-hmm. I'm in favor of tabling it, but as of right now, I'm thinking we just leave it the way it is.
All right, well, we have a motion to table, and you'd second to table it, though?
Yep.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second to table the request for the stop sign. Any further discussion? I'll call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, 1 against. All right, we're going to move on to action item E, ordinance 748, rezoning.
This is the rezoning that Sarah mentioned earlier, the amendment to the zoning map, and you have in your packet the staff report from Planning Commission versus the council one, because it covers all the information. This property is on 10th Street South. It's between Main Street and Fair Lane on the north side of the road. It's that white house that's one house off, or one property off of Main Street. So if you recall which property that is, the proposal for that is to become zoned C2, and what that would do is to allow for a business to be located in there. It's currently located rezoned or zoned multifamily residential. The proposed use of that is going to be office space, and it's going to be for, do you want to say your name? For alternative senior care. I didn't know if that was out there yet or not. So, but alternative senior care would be their new office space down there. So the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing at their last meeting, and they recommend that the City Council amend the zoning map to change that to a C2 zoning district. You do have ordinance number 748 in your packet that makes that change.
All right. Just so, again, when doing zoning changes, one of the things we look at is to make sure that we are not spot zoning and making changes to the zoning just based on areas that's not surrounded by an existing zone. That's not the case here. The current zone that's being proposed has commercial already on 3 sides, it looks like. So it appears that we would not be doing any spot zoning. We'd be just continuing on with an existing zone that almost surrounds that place already. So is there any other comments or questions? Any questions for the applicant or for Vicky? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve ordinance 748 amending zoning map as presented?
So moved.
Okay, got a motion by Warren.
Second.
And I got a second already over by Keith. Is there any discussion? Call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against. Thank you. Moving on to F, approve resolution 2014-73, consent to transfer control.
What you have in front of you is a resolution proposal to consent to the name change for Charter. Charter Communications and Comcast have entered into a merger agreement. Because the city holds a franchise agreement with that, they need to have a resolution of consent to that transfer. The new business will be called New Charter. And what this agreement does is simply consent to that transfer. New Charter will be bound by the franchise agreement we currently have with Charter Communications. So this would go into effect as when their transaction is finalized at the same time. That's Resolution 2014-73.
Any questions? Again, this is consistent. It's not the first time that we've had change orders, change requests for name changes for our video cable TV franchise. We've had several of them actually in the years prior. It is federally required by FCC that they get a resolution approving this just due to the franchise agreement that they have in place with the city. So, is there a motion to approve resolution 2014-73 consenting to transfer of control?
So moved.
Motion made by Mike and seconded by Keith. He said it before I even got a chance to read it. So, is there any discussion? I'll call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against. All right, moving on. Action item 7G, Downtown Flowers for 2015.
Pam Borgman had requested to come and address the council, and then she called, or then wasn't sure she could get here on time, so maybe we just could table this till the next meeting.
I think that would be best. Is there a motion to approve action item
table.
7G?
Second.
Or, excuse me, table? I'm sorry. Motion by Dave to table, seconded by Mike. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against, to table action item 7G. Okay, moving on. Action item H, appoint part-time seasonal employment for the parks and the arena.
This is the time of the year to appoint the ice arena attendant, the figure skating instructors, and the outdoor rink attendant. And we do have returning people to come to each of these positions this year. The ice arena attendant and outdoor rink attendant, that wage is set by the contract that we have with the union to address seasonal workers. And so the ice arena attendant is Keith Sorensen. He's been with the ice arena since it was built. The figure skating instructors are Sarah Linow, Kelsey Krawecki, Anna T. Shaver, and Morgan Hess. And the figure skating instructors, they've always worked Sunday evenings, but the park board has changed that at their last meeting to Saturday mornings now. So figure skating instruction will now be on Saturday mornings instead of Sunday evenings. And that's like for an hour and a half. So it's an hour and a half a week. This portion of the budget is funded by the figure skating fees, so it's cost neutral. And then the outdoor rink attendant is Dennis Christensen. He's the one that helps us mow in the summer, and then he watches the rink outdoors in the winter time. So his rate remains the same as the summer. So our action that was requested is to appoint these part-time seasonal parks and arena employees.
Any questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the appointment of the part-time seasonal employments as noted?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Keith and seconded by Dave. Is there any questions? Comments? I'll call a motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against. Okay, moving on. Appoint EMTs.
We have a request by the ambulance director of the ambulance department to make appointments to the ambulance crew. I did provide to you with her letter and requesting the city council. They are requesting to send applicant Christina Heinen to EMT classes beginning October. Classes are held through North Ambulance Service in Alexandria and run through March of 2015. Also to have Andrea Kerfeld to the EMT classes in Alexandria. Andrea is currently certified as a first responder and is a driver for the ambulance service. This would upgrade her training to EMT level, which we kind of talked about when we first made her an EMT. They're requesting to appoint Robert L. Olson as a probationary EMT with the service effective October 1st. He is already certified as an EMT, so would require no additional training, and he will be doing some ride-alongs with the service before then to become acquainted with the service and the crew. And as Kathy says, her current roster is 20, 19 EMTs and a first responder driver. And they're looking ahead to the future and possible needs for maintaining the crew with the call load they have. They believe this is a good option at this time. And Kathy is here to answer any questions you might have. Otherwise, we're requesting to appoint Robert L. Olson as a probationary EMT, contingent upon successful background, and authorize Christina Heinen and Andrea Kerfeld to attend the class.
Anybody have any questions? Seems to make perfect sense to appoint somebody that's got all the training in place, and if they pass all of the requirements as far as background checks, that's a very good fit. Also seems we have in the past had first responders be drivers and then move on to be EMTs, and it's been a very positive, I think, the way it appears. And then getting an additional person to meet the roster of 20 based on the call volume that was presented at the last meeting, or at the budget meeting, excuse me, it seems to make sense. Is there any questions? Otherwise, is there a motion to appoint Robert L. Olson as a probationary EMT contingent upon successful background, and authorize Christina Heinen and Andrea Kerfeld to attend the EMT class?
So moved.
I have a motion by Keith. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dave. Is there any discussion? I'll call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against. All right, moving on to J. Approve wage scale for accounting payroll specialist.
At the last council meeting, you approved moving forward with the hiring process, or 2 meetings ago. We did have the revised job description looked at a couple different times for an assignment of points, and the position scored 271, places it at grade 9 of the non-union scale. However, as we look through the job description, there is maybe opportunity for an upgrade in the future if the position it's reevaluated and other duties are assigned, so just keep that in mind. And so what we're looking for today is approve the placement of 271 points to the position. And the interviews are scheduled for next Wednesday, and we have an interview panel of 5. We're going to be interviewing quite a few people, so it's going to be a long day. And we hope to have a recommendation at the next council meeting for an appointment. But for tonight, we're requesting the placement of the points to the position of 271.
Any questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the placement of 271 points to the position of accounting payroll specialist as outlined?
So move.
Motion by Warren, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dave. Is there any discussion? Call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against. Okay, moving on. Approved scope of services contract for storm pond remediation condition.
At the last meeting, Keith Yap from Stantec, he provided the city the scope of services along with the cost to plan the cleaning of the 2 stormwater retention ponds. You tabled the request until this meeting. I have enclosed the copy of the proposal again, and Keith can answer any questions. It basically is going to take care of the surveying, sampling, and bidding of the project, and I did have some conversations with Dave today about exactly what that all entails, so I don't know if he would like to ask those to Keith at this time, or if we have any other additions to, or any other questions to Keith. Otherwise, this is something that would occur over the winter, so we would propose to do the work next summer. But the sampling actually occurs through the ice, so that is why we do it over the winter time. And then, so that would be kind of our request tonight, unless you have some questions of him.
Vicki, I know I also visited with you on this and asked you about what we could work with the Sauk River watershed or others that have maybe some familiarity in doing these types of sampling. Did we get anything back?
I had talked earlier to Adam over at the watershed about some of the sampling that they do, and a lot of times they contract it out as well, but I wasn't able to reach him today to ask additional questions.
Very good. Maybe we have a few questions, Keith, for you then. Dave, did you get your questions answered, or are you?
I got my questions answered.
Okay. Keith, just looking through the scope of the work, the cost being approximately $4,800, and the sediment sampling and the pond surveys, I guess were the two things that come to my mind about. I understand we're taking six samples. 2 per pond. We do that after it freezes over, and we drill down.
Yep.
How is that done, and how does that rate? Is that rate based on you guys hiring somebody to come in, or are you doing that yourself, or what?
Yeah, that's actually our staff doing that. So it's done with just a big hand auger, if you will, split spoon kind of thing. So it's pretty labor intensive to do it, to get those samples. But that's, our estimate of the time it'll take for 2 people to go out and do those actual samples. But it is our staff doing that. Then those samples then are delivered, I think right here in town, you have a facility that can actually do the analysis on that, on those samples. And then the surveys are really just drilling a bunch of holes through the ice and then going through and shooting all of the elevations and down to the sediment level down below, and then we produce a contour map of what it is right now versus what it was in the future, and we look at how much volume needs to come out of there. So that's what that is. So that's just survey time is to do that.
Do both ponds completely freeze over and have water them on an annual basis? Do you ever find them to be, or there won't be?
Well, certainly when you get sometimes early in the season, if you get a little late rain or something that might not freeze right away, then again in the late winter you can have some issues. But normally they freeze up fine. We do these in a number of other cities where you go out and take those samples. So it's normally not a trouble. One of the things about the construction, we like to do them in the winter or do this because we also would like to consider having the option of actually doing the clean out in the winter as well. That's actually less disruption doing it in the winter time in terms of the access to it and tearing up everything. So many times these are done in the winter time. Doesn't mean they have to be, but it would give us the option of potentially doing the work even yet this winter, or delaying it and do it sometime during the summer. So it gives you a little option.
And your cost, as far as preparing everything for bid, it's all included in the $2,400?
Yep, that's correct. trying to do, Vicki and I talked about what things can the city do, what things do we need to do to then give to you so that you can really take and run with the project, try to keep it as, as cost effective as you can.
You got a timetable as far as how long it would take to clean them out once we get the...
Well, until I know how much is in there, it's a little hard to say, but it's obviously work is slower in the wintertime, but the good news is sometimes you also get better pricing in the wintertime because people are looking for something to do. So, but depends on what comes up with these things. I mean, they may need to, these aren't necessarily a cheap project. I mean, most of the time, the sediment that comes out of these needs to go to a designated landfill. So, just to be kind of forewarned, I mean, we can go through these and get some costs, but they're expensive, unfortunately, and you're not the only ones who have ponds, and they have to be dealt with eventually. But the requirements of the state are such that most of the time it's actually driveway sealers. That's the chemicals that are ultimately getting down in there, and it's polluting that sediment, and it can no longer be land applied. Now, if we get lucky and can land apply, maybe it's even, if it's only just one or two of them, certainly that's a benefit for us. So, we'll do that sampling and hope for the best.
Any other questions?
If we do the sampling and find out that there is something that would require it to be disposed of at a certain landfill or whatever, are we required to clean it out?
No, it's only when you do clean it out, that's where it'll have to go to. So, I think it would behoove us to at least get the analysis done. We can find out how much is in there, get to that point, and then we can decide, how much do we think this is going to cost. I think it's best to assume that it's likely going to have to go to a landfill. That would be what I would ask you to assume, probably that. Hope for maybe less, but I think you'd best assume that it's going to a landfill.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Hearing none, no other comments, is there a desire of the council? Is there a motion to approve the scope of services contract for Storm Pond cleaning project as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Mike, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Warren. Is there any discussion?
Maybe there's gold in that sediment.
It's something that I think, again,
We'll bring
one
it
of
to
those-
your place then, huh?
right? One of those projects we just haven't done for a long time that's in need, and I think, as Keith noted, and I visited a little bit with Vicki, my concern will be the cost, because it could get very expensive, so we got to plan and be prepared for that.
Well, one of the things is if you look at the industrial park pond, you can pretty much see the size of it beforehand. It's filled in enough now that probably 3/4 of it is cattails. There isn't a whole lot of water surface visible anymore, so it's obviously overfull.
Right. All right, hearing that and our comments, we have a motion and a second. I'll call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 5 in favor. Moving on to L, approve resolution 2014-74, declaring property as excess. Looks like,
You have an amended one in front of you to add a couple of vehicles to it. The police department has obtained the title to the following forfeited vehicles to be offered for sale. We have a 2001 Chrysler Town & Country, a 2000 Chevrolet Silverado, a 91 Chevrolet pickup, a 2002 Olero, 2004 Ford Excursion, a 95 Ford Escort, a 96 Cadillac DeVille, and this is not a vehicle, it's a Browning 22 Buckmaster rifle. And so the action requested is to approve Resolution 2014-74, declaring the property as excess and authorizing advertisement for sale.
any questions? We will advertise online. How we plan to do the advertising?
We would do it through the min-bid online auction service.
Okay. And anticipate when they will be available to be online and viewed. 2 weeks? All right, and if anybody wants to look at them further, contact Brian or the police department or Vicky, and they'll make sure that they get in to see them.
And they'll get them ready, and they'll be staged down at the Public Works there in that,
Yep.
that fenced area just west of the Public Works building.
Correct. Any questions? Is there a motion to approve the resolution? I'm sorry, go
The
ahead.
rifle, I assume, will likely go over to the pawn
Rifle
shop where
goes
the
to
others
the-
are gone, probably.
On, or what's you doing with that, Brian?
Probably live at the pawn shop or the general store will stay.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Any other questions, comments? Is there a motion then to approve the resolution 2014-74 declaring the property as excess and authorizing advertisement for sale?
So moved.
So moved.
Motion by Mike and seconded by Keith. Is there any discussion? I'll call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. 5 in favor. All right, this time we've got all our action items complete. We'll move on to our unfinished business. Our unfinished business is report on the hydrology study, as I believe Keith's gonna use the overhead to show us.
I'm going to take this and hope that it doesn't stop working on us.
Okay?
Still working? Yes. Well, Mayor and Council, we are finished with the alternatives analysis. I'm going to try to move out of the picture of the camera here. Alternative analysis for the hydrology and hydraulic study. Excuse
Do you
me?
have any handouts or just what you got?
I only, just what's up here. This is just a short, so this isn't the presentation. This is just a short summary, so they give you kind of where we're at. And I thought a picture's worth 1,000 words, so I wanted to show you a few pictures. So this isn't the formal presentation, this is just an update, but maybe a few pictures with it. So we finished with the alternatives analysis, and I want to show you several of the alternatives that are the most promising, and those are the ones we'll be fleshing out in detail. Just briefly, sorry, that's a little hard. That says 200 acres in there, sorry. That is the project area. So we have 200 total drainage acres that are going down through this entire system. And we have our flooding problems that we have right in through here, and we have our really a trunk system that runs east and west down this direction. We also have one that comes from the pond that's located up here all the way down Fairlane, comes across the east side of Walmart, and then ultimately down into this pond here. So that's kind of where the existing systems are at. I want to show you just show you the complexity. This is actually the hydraulic model. I'm not going to go into any detail, but just kind of show you, like as an example, right here is Main Street, right through here. So that everything over here is the west side. This is Fairlane right through here. This is that pond that's way up on that north side there, up by the viaduct. This is Walmart would be like located right in through here. So there's a lot of work that's gone in modeling all the detailed reaches through all of this whole system, and to look at we've gone through 6 different alternatives that we reviewed along with this study. One of the most promising things we've seen is that, boy, I'm sorry, those ones sure looked a lot better on here, but they don't show up real well up there. This is the west side. What we found is that under most of the alternatives, with the exception of one that I'll show you in a minute, there's some things we should do on the west side that really are unique to each of, or excuse me, they're common to all of them. They're the best solution that we could find through here. And that is, we had talked about a pond located in this corner here, where we have Getty and Beltline Drive, and we also looked at upstream. We have another location where there's the possibility of putting in a pond up through there. Those 2 ponds actually help a fair amount as we go through this system, as well as additional, this would be replacement pipe. This goes up to 24 to 36 inch pipe ranging from here all the way down. It connects into our existing system located over here, which is just like 1 block east of Main Street. So, with relatively not a lot of improvements, we make marked improvements on the overall flooding situation in through here. So
Before you go on, what size is the pipe are we connecting into the existing where you just noted right there?
This is 36 inch over
So
here.
we would
Yep,
upgrade, go from a 24 to 36 to connect into a 36?
that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And there's another part, this component that goes with this, and I'll show you that, I believe, next. And that is, we found, is there's a pretty significant bottleneck with the amount of flow that's coming down Fairlane. So this is Fairlane. These are, I believe it's 48 inch that's coming down through Fairlane. And one of the things we're looking at, and just keep this in concept, we're looking at a pond. I mean, the pond could potentially be in this corner, but I have it currently showing that it would fit nicely in this particular location. This really is a surge basin, which means that when you get to certain excess flows, it just spills out of the pipe, goes into a pond, kind of fills up, and then eventually drains back out again, back into the system. So it's just really a relief valve, if you can think about it in those terms. Those two things, the one I showed you before, and this right here, are one and probably the best solution I see. We're just starting to put cost to this, but I believe that's probably going to most likely be the most cost-effective alternative that we have. So those two that you're seeing are probably our most likely recommended alternative. So it's, you know, I was, to be honest, expecting, quite surprised. I was expecting quite a bit more, but just by going through this, finding some key bottlenecks in the existing system, we can make some significant improvements with not huge amount of dollars, if you will.
Is there a safety issue with that pond there? Because it's right next to those, the
Apartments.
With the apartments? Well, it's a pond, you know, usually we do those with 6 to 1 side slopes that are fairly gentle. We could go and put fencing around it, you know, if we go, you know, when this gets constructed, that does. Generally, the insurance companies have been recommending, and I certainly would defer this to your insurance agent, but my understanding is they've been usually suggesting that you actually don't fence them in. What I've heard is they suggest that they think that's more dangerous having the fence around versus not having a fence around them. But that might be a question for our insurance agent.
Both of your ponds that you got here, this one and the prior one,
Yep.
is on a significant large scale. We probably will not have enough right away, obviously, to address those two ponds.
No. So these-
there will be some type of an land acquisition,
Right.
sale.
All three of them would be property, I would say at least easements, not necessarily acquisition, but it would be easements. And normally, if they can't be used, for all practical purposes, you can almost think of it as an acquisition, because you're going to be paying for at least probably 80% of the value of the land or better. So you're pretty much acquiring them. They're not huge ponds. You know, it probably looks a little bigger, but so they're not huge. But you know, this is kind of in concept, so it's probably not going to be a square pond, but you know, just in concept at this point. So
when you were identifying the alternatives, did you take into consideration land values?
We looked at primarily, you know, where it makes the most sense to try and put these things. As I mentioned, you know, we have perhaps a couple of options that could work in through here. So we have a couple options to look at for land. Whether these values are going to be much different, probably not, probably in the same location. But, you know, we look at where can we get the most bang for our buck to make these significant changes. Because this one, for, you know, essentially having a cut into the existing pipe in the pond makes a huge impact on our system.
So land value.
Positive impact.
So your land value calculation.
I haven't yet, but those will go into it. So we will be putting those into the, that's the next step, is we're actually doing those cost estimates, just starting to do those now.
Okay.
And land will be a part of that. Okay. Another option still has that west side piping, but instead of that pond we just looked at, it has another parallel pipe. This is actually a 42-inch pipe that would come down across 12th along the north side of the Walmart area and down into another pond that would be located in this general vicinity. Now, the reason for this spot versus, say, this spot, there is an alternative, and you'll see these eventually, but there is an alternative where there is a pond down here. The pond down here is much deeper, and it comes off of this trunk. This is a 54-inch through here. This one's actually a fairly shallow pipe that goes through here. Therefore, the pond up here is also not as deep. We're really, essentially what this is it cuts off the flow to the west and routes it into this pipe, puts it into this pond, and then dumps it back into this trunk, this existing trunk that goes through here. So even though this through here, think about it as really sandwiched pipes. One's down below, one's up higher, and the new one would be up higher, much shallower. It's shallower, it makes it more cost effective to install. The pond's not as deep, so we don't have to remove as much excavation, so it makes it a little more cheaper to do that. So that's another, that option I talked about before and this one are what we think will probably be the most cost effective alternatives of all the 6 that we've looked at.
Is this, you're going into a 54-inch pipe right there,
Yep.
correct?
Correct.
Is this pond required by the size of that pipe that's currently there? You're taking a tremendous amount of flow into a quite large pipe, and that pipe, does that 54-inch go then all the way to?
All the way to the river.
Basically?
That's correct, yep.
Okay.
Right, that's essentially, you can think of this pond again as kind of a surge basin, if you will. It's letting some of that water expand. It reduces the time that it's going through. It makes it sit in the pond for a while, and then it bleeds back into that 54-inch at a lower rate.
Chances of that pond actually having water in it is probably...
This pond, because of the depth, this pond could be a dry pond.
Right, okay.
You bet. This could be a dry pond. And the other one would be proposed to be a dry pond. We could make it a wet pond if we wanted to take advantage of some water quality improvements through there. We could, but it wouldn't have to be. It could be a dry pond as well.
Is there any type of funding if we were to look at one versus the other?
Well, doing water quality, we'd have more of an option to get something. The ponds are kind of a dime a dozen, so I'm not really sure how much, but obviously we could check with the watershed and see if they'd be willing to help us on any of that at all to make some improvements. But from a safety perspective as well, that might be something to consider, a dry pond in that area that would alleviate the issues with the apartment buildings next door. Another option is really, we talked kind of a little bit about this one, where we really take this water from the west side, route it across Main Street, down Fairlane, and back around. It connects back into that 54-inch down through here. So there isn't a parallel pipe all the way to the east. It connects back in at this location. A little more piping, so I expect this one to probably be a little more expensive, but at this point, we also have to tear up more roadway through here. We do as well up in this section. However, with both alternatives, if we can coordinate that with the county, then the road repairs aren't really a cost to the city. However, everything over here would be. So it's another alternative that's being looked at. There would be a small pond that would be located here, and this really is just pretty much for this site, because there'll have to be something there when that site is developed. So we're proposing that there would be some little pond that would be necessary in that location, but then it'll drain across and through here. So we really don't have the room to come through here. We can't be in the MnDOT's right-of-way with a pipe that parallels it. So we pretty much have to go this particular route in order to get away from being in MnDOT's right-of-way. They won't allow that. So this is another alternative. So those ones I've showed you are probably what I would say the most, where we get the most benefit from a stormwater perspective, and are probably the most cost-effective of all the 6 alternatives that we've looked at. So
this particular site or alternative route here has you going under Highway 71 there and then crossing state property and into Timberlane, as you noted.
Yep. Yes.
What is the size of that current pipe that's going under 71 right now?
The current pipe is, I believe, a 24.
So you're not changing that?
Yeah, and that is it. So we'd maintain, we'd have to look at the condition, but I would suggest that we would not change that pipe. We'd end up just connecting on to either end with the structure, those kinds of things. As long as we can make sure that, and I'm pretty sure we did, so that all the inverts match through here, so we wouldn't have to go through there, because that's kind of expensive to go across through there.
So there would be a minimal permit requirement if we're going to use existing.
Correct.
I'm just making sure that we could get approval by even the state to utilize that option.
Even if we had to do this pipe brand new through there, getting approval to go across there is generally not that big of a
Just can't
issue.
barrel it.
It's just that, they're not going to let us open cut it, so we're going to have to jack it like we did out here on Fourth, and that gets pretty spendy. Now, this is a much smaller pipe, so it's not as expensive as we just did on Fourth Street a couple of years ago, but every time we jack something, it gets pretty expensive.
And there is
so.
no stormwater on Timber Lane right there where all that new piping you got going on?
There is actually, so this would be essentially replacing some of that. So this is 24, 27, it goes to 30 inch all the way down to make that connection down here.
Because that's all new pipe, fairly new piping.
It's fairly new piping through there. Unfortunately, it's not large enough. So we'd have to, we're better off, because we got to tear up the road anyway, we're better off just replacing that stretch, connecting the existing, essentially onto that location, and catch basins that are along the way. So,
Okay.
so that is really pretty much all I have for tonight. I just wanted to show you where we're at, show you those alternatives, what the ones I think are going to be the most, the likely will rise to the top as we finish the report out for you, but that's where we're at. I was pretty pleased, frankly. I thought it was good news, that one, especially that one option, that first one I showed you. I think that's going to be much less than what I was anticipating that we would end up with, so.
That first one you were showing us, that's basically all going to be dry ponds, you hope?
Yes.
Two.
It could be. It's proposed it could be dry ponds. We could make them water quality ponds. We could make some wet volume in there if we choose. That's a decision that we can get to, but they could also be dry ponds.
Okay, because I'm looking at the maintenance part of it. We haven't seen the numbers for cleaning
Right.
3 wet ponds now, and if we all of a
Right.
sudden add a few more
Right.
to them,
But however, remember, we still end up going down to one. We probably will have to make that pond a little bit larger, so those will be in the cost. So you'll end up getting it somewhere. Now, if we can put them together, that's why I've always tried to advocate regional ponds, because if we can put them together, it just saves us money in the long run on maintenance and everything and putting them in the first place. The more ponds we have around, it's going to cost a lot when we maintain them. Most cities are just getting to the point where they're starting to have to clean these things out, and we're finding that it's expensive because of the environmental rules that have been enacted in the recent, 10, 15 years.
the other thing with the dry ponds is if they are dry, we're going to have to, our street crews are going to have to do a lot of mowing and maintaining. So our maintenance is gonna go up, because I'm guaranteed if that one pond is next to the apartments down there on Fairlane,
Right.
and that turns into a 3-4 feet high grass, just as a dry pond, it's not gonna so we're gonna be looking at an increase in the maintenance budget.
Yeah, right. And, it wouldn't be they're not huge ponds, but yes, they would definitely be an increase in some mowing.
Right.
So, okay.
Any other questions? Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.
That was a very good presentation. We're still on track to meet all the timelines that we've set for the plan, as well as getting back to the county with what our plan is.
Yeah, that's one of the next things we really actually are to a point, and this is a discussion I'll have with Vicki here in the next day or two, is to probably sit down with them and probably go through at least some of these alternatives before we even get too far down the line, talk about them a little bit, and just see if there's any huge red flags that they see, because 12th Street is there, so there are some impacts to their infrastructure that we need to deal with. So I think that'll be kind of one of the next things we do.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Any other unfinished business or new business? I don't believe it's anything on our agenda, so we'll move right into our consent agenda. We have several things on our consent agenda this evening. We got a total of schedule of claims for a total of unpaid claims of $42,024.07. Paid claims of $1,383.75 for a total of $43,407.82. We also had our August checks. Check number 2282E through 2302E and 035414 through 035526, along with 4 payroll transfers for a total of $1,174,387.13. We want to certainly recognize and accept the contributions, so we have a resolution doing so. The Color Dash has a contribution of $1,224.97 to the splash pad. We got a clothing fundraiser of $1,654 to the splash pad. We had a $10 donation for 50% off coupon when Meads had their special for $3,421.90 to the splash pad. We had a donation by Lorraine Peschel for $50 to the splash pad. Center Dairy Equipment, $150 to the splash pad. Mark and Jennifer Mayer, $24 to the splash pad. Again, I thank all of them for their donations. As I noted, it's much appreciated. We also have a gambling application for exempt permit request from Holy Family School for a raffle on December 17th at Holy Family School. Is there any other consent agenda items, Vicki? Hearing that, does staff have any questions of the consent agenda as presented? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
I have a motion by Dave and seconded by Keith. And no discussion? I'll call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against. Just a couple informational items. One of the informational items came from our meeting that we had for our budget meeting, and it was asked about the long-range capital planning. So that's in your packet for you to review. If you have questions, talk with staff, talk with Vicki, but that is for your information. The other thing that's probably the most important is we have a board of review and equalization training coming on Wednesday, October 29th from 6:30 to 9:30. We will need to have somebody attend that. So please talk with Vicki if anybody is available. We need that training in order to move forward with our annual requirements going forward in 2015 as well as here at year end. So I will not be attending, but I'll certainly would entertain you guys too, as I won't be here next year. So certainly plan to talk with
I
Vicki.
think both you and I were up, right?
I don't know who do we know who's
I
up?
think Keith and I were the last two.
Expiring in November.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ours is?
Yeah.
Well, it
So
probably
we
won't
have
be here
2
either.
people that have had the training that are expiring in November, which is why we have to have some new people, or they have to
Yeah.
be entitled, or he has to do it again.
It is riveting education.
Yeah, right. All right. With that, we have no other informational items, nothing else on our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Mike, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dave. Any discussion? I'll call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.